Hi guys, this is Hero, and today I'm going to be diving into Saturn Mahadasha, or Saturn Dashas in general, okay? So, one thing to realize here is you have to look at the planets before and after in the Dasha order, okay? So, I just recently made a Rahu and Ketu Dasha video, okay? Both of them, I targeted more the planets dashas that come after those two, right? So for Ketu, after comes Venus, and Rahu, after comes Jupiter, just because those are the quote unquote like the most sought after dashas, you can say, for people, okay? But you have to look at the before too, right? So Saturn, what do you notice before and after? So before and after are Jupiter, and after is Mercury, okay? So they both have to do with like being smart, you can say, okay? Jupiter has to do with wisdom, and Mercury has more to do with rational intelligence. Just like Ketu, before and after, it's Mercury and Venus, and they both have to do with like materialistic like success, you can say. And with Rahu, before it's Mars, and after it's Jupiter, you can say that it has to do with, both of them have to do with intuition, okay? So, and that intuition, well, first of all, they're both intuitive. I'm jumping to that conclusion because they both are the only planets that own a water and a fire sign, right? But now, what do you notice? Rahu is not super intuitive as it is, okay? Ketu, it has Mercury and Venus before and after, but Ketu is not really crazy great for, materialistic success like Mercury and Venus are kind of conventionally known to bring, right? So now let's play this into Saturn. So Saturn, it has Jupiter before and Mercury afterwards, right? So it kind of has to do with what I said, like being smart. And it also has to do with kind of, quote unquote, like things going your way, okay? As far as like your ventures in life. So Saturn, like I said, it's somewhat the exact opposite of that, okay? It could bring you that, just like Ketu sometimes could bring you materialistic like gains, and Rahu sometimes could bring you, super spiritual wisdom. Saturn could give you those things too, but conventionally, they don't, okay? Why am I discussing this? Is because it's important to look at the whole story of like all the planets and see how they all kind of connect to each other, okay? Because that order, it's the same for Anta Dashas and it's the same for Pratyanta Dashas, okay? That order is very important, and it's very important to know why that order exists the way it does, okay? Now, one other thing. So Rahu, it's kind of like if you do what it wants you to do, you're going to suffer at the end. Ketu, it's like if you don't do what it wants you to do, you're going to suffer. Saturn's like a combination of both of them, but a little bit different, and I'll explain why. So Rahu and Ketu, as you guys know, they both move backwards, okay? Saturn, it moves slower, but it's the slowest. So Rahu and Ketu both move backward, right? So it's kind of like when planets go retrograde, like they just act a little differently, okay? So you can kind of connect them to that. Saturn's kind of almost like a stationary, right? Because it's moving very slow. So when a planet is stationary, it's kind of emulating those kind of vibes, okay? You can say. But that's why you guys might have heard me talk about stationary energies are so important, okay? That's why, in my opinion, Saturn's the most natural, powerful planet out of all of them, okay? So what does Saturn want you to do? So I just said Rahu wants you to, if you do what it wants you to do, you're going to suffer. And Ketu, if you do the exact opposite, if you don't do what it wants you to do, you suffer. Saturn kind of wants you to do a combination of them, but like a little bit differently. So with Saturn, so we know the conventional things of Saturn, hopefully, right? That like, okay, Saturn's a planet of kind of getting going on the karmas for this life, okay? So one thing it's going to want you to do is kind of fix your lifestyle, okay? Why does Saturn own Capricorn, okay? And then Aquarius is right after. It's because you can establish discipline and stuff and then use that discipline in the right direction, which is kind of what Aquarius represents, okay? Like for the greater good, you can say. So Saturn's kind of going to want you to do that. So it wants you to, so if you don't do that, it's going to make you suffer, kind of in a way of like Ketu does. If you don't do what it wants you to do, you're going to suffer. So Saturn, if you don't do those things, kind of clean up your lifestyle, clean up your act, do what you're supposed to do, it's going to make you suffer. But here's the catch. So with Rahu, if you do what it wants you to do, which is kind of like, go after that materialistic stuff too much, you're going to suffer then. So the same thing with Saturn. So yeah, you're going to clean up your act, all this stuff. But if you get too attached to all the nonsense, materialistic gains that those actions could conventionally bring you, you're going to also suffer. So Saturn's a very, very big balance, right? So it's a balance of doing the right thing, putting in the discipline where you're supposed to, but also being at the same time detached from the outcome. Okay, it's a very, very tricky thing to do. Okay, Rahu and Ketu, in my opinion, they're more extreme, and the results can be more sudden and harsh, obviously, because Saturn, it's just moving so slow. So Rahu and Ketu, they can be more extreme and stuff, but like I said, they tend to both lean on opposite extremes. Okay, Saturn, it's kind of trying to do both, so it's a little bit harder to balance. So Rahu and Ketu, it's lessons it's trying to teach you are more harsh, but when you learn them, they'll kind of back off. Or even if they don't back off, you've learned the lessons, so whatever pain it could bring you, it ideally won't affect you as much if you've genuinely learned the lessons that it's trying to tell you. With Saturn, okay, there's two things. One, like Rahu and Ketu, the results could come a little bit more sudden, okay? With Saturn, it's going to come very, very, very slow. It's kind of going to milk you away every day or every week or every month, whatever. So you could look at this as good or bad, okay? It's all kind of how you view it, okay? Whether you kind of just want the bad thing to happen, like Rahu and Ketu all of a sudden, and then you learn the hard way, quote unquote, or whether it's Saturn, you're kind of slowly receiving pain, and then you'll kind of learn that way. Once you kind of wake up after you're tired of dealing all this pain. Okay. So Saturn, like I said, it's gonna cause kind of the quote unquote pain more slowly, and there might not be like a sudden, like it's just gonna get ripped away like Rahu and Ketu. But that pain, it's gonna start from day one, and it's gonna be very intense the whole time. And you're gonna see it's gonna be very, very, very energetically and spiritually, like just literally draining you, that thing. Okay, that's why. And like I said, there has to be that balance. There has to be that balance of implementing the right things to do and being detached from the outcome. So there's both involved. Okay, that's why, in my opinion, if you are very spiritually kind of aware of everything, Saturn's kind of going to be the most harsh out of the three, right? Why? Because if you're spiritually aware or somewhat enlightened in some sense, you're going to know a lot of the lessons that Rahu and Ketu are trying to teach you. So if you kind of get like a very subtle warning, you're going to calm down, and it's probably not going to treat you that bad. And if it does, it's coming, and you know how to detach just right when it happens. Saturn, like I said, even if you kind of know what's going on and stuff, you're aware you're starting your dasha, you're aware you're gonna have to work hard and be kind of detached from the outcome. It's still gonna like just really squeeze the life out of you every day. It could, right? You have to look at your chart and stuff. Maybe yours is good, but I'm just talking from a conventional general sense. Okay, now. So it's kind of teaching you some of the similar lessons that Rahu and Ketu are teaching you, as far as, getting humbled. And like I said, learning that kind of quote unquote balance both of them bring, Rahu and Ketu, but without, going too far on the extremes. It's going to kind of teach you the lesson slowly, but most likely won't cause like a huge disaster at any point in time. Okay, you'll kind of see it coming, even if that does happen, and most likely it won't that bad as Rahu and Ketu. Okay, so it just has a different way of teaching you. Okay, there's a reason why. Okay, I'll give you another thing. So which planets have the long dasha periods? Okay, so 16 to 20 years. There's a short-term planets, which is like Sun, Moon, and Mars, and Ketu. And which ones have the long ones? It's Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, and Venus. Okay, so all of them are in a row, except Ketu is between Mercury and Venus, and Ketu is just so intense. It's the most intense, right? But if you look at it, Saturn's dasha is literally between Rahu's and Ketu's. Like, it's just with one in between each to kind of give you a little bit of a break, okay? So it's like Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, and then Mercury, Ketu, okay? So it's like Saturn is kind of right in the middle of both of them, with just one in between, just like I said, just to kind of give you a break. So between Rahu and Saturn is Jupiter, and between Saturn and Ketu is Mercury, okay? And then after Ketu, you run Venus, and then all the rest of the short ones until you get to Rahu, okay? Again, okay? So where was I going with this? So yeah, like I said, it's kind of like, it's not as harsh as Rahu and Ketu, but in other ways, it can be just as harsh. Like, it's harsher in some aspects, but not harsher in others, okay? So just to kind of recap before I end this video. So, because it's important to kind of understand the differences of each, right? Because like I said, Rahu and Ketu, they're retrograde, so they're kind of giving retrograde style energies. Saturn is just moving so slow, so it's kind of almost giving stationary like energies, okay? So, Rahu, Ketu, they both tend to extremes, right? Rahu is if you do what it wants you to do, you're going to suffer. Ketu is if you don't do what it wants you to do, it's going to suffer. And both of them, results can come very, very suddenly, okay? And you won't get too much warning, but you'll get more time before the results come, okay? So it's kind of, it'll give you very subtle hints to knock it off. And if you don't after a while, it's going to pop off, okay? With Ketu a little bit faster than Rahu, okay? Saturn's not going to do that. So Saturn, like I said, you got to do both, but just not as extreme, quote unquote, conventionally, okay? You got to do what it wants you to do, kind of like Ketu in the sense of work, like you know, clean up your act, establish discipline, all that kind of stuff. But you can't focus too much on the outcome and personal gain and stuff like that, depending on your chart, because it's going to punish you if you go too far that way either, okay? And because Saturn is so sensitive, it's gonna show its effect from day one. Just like how Ketu kind of shows its effect a little bit sooner than Rahu, mostly due to Ketu's Dasha just being way quicker than Rahu. Saturn's gonna show its effect way at the beginning too. But it's kind of gonna slowly give you painful messages throughout, more and more painful until you clean up your act, okay? And most likely, if you don't clean up your act, because you know you've been in pain the whole time, or more and more pain, most likely there won't be some huge disaster, okay? But the pain's just gonna keep getting worse and worse and worse. And sometimes a disaster can occur, okay? But I'm not ruling that out. But just compared to Rahu and Ketu, conventionally, it's not gonna give like a huge sudden disaster like them. But Saturn, it will punish you every single day. And how much it punishes you and all that, you gotta look at your chart and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the main gist of Saturn. Hopefully you guys learned something. So if you have any questions or comments, let me know. And until next time, talk to you guys later. Thank you.